Hi, welcome back to See You Live. I'm Lauren Sega, Associate Editor with Columbus Underground. Here with me today is Kelley Griesmer, President and CEO of the Women's Fund of Central Ohio. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so today we're talking about not just the pay gap, but the wealth gap. Recently, the Women's Fund released a report, Assets for Equity, Building Wealth for Women in Central Ohio. And the difference between the pay gap and the wealth gap we want to make sure to emphasize is that it's what you own minus what you owe, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
So some key takeaways from the report that I saw was that for every dollar that a single man makes, single white women make 40 cents or own 40 cents. So that's not earn, that's own 40 cents. And it gets even crazier for black single women. I think it's 2 cents.
2 cents
per dollar. And then Latina women, it's 8 cents. And we saw some key reasons for that, student and medical debt, and then women just tend to occupy lower income positions and part-time jobs, which is crazy to me because I feel like last year I was seeing reports come out about how women are entering higher education at higher rates than men. So where's that disconnect there?
Well, the disconnect is that women will do whatever they can to try to better themselves. We tend to believe that we need all the qualifications to fill jobs. We need to be completely, our resumes have to be perfect. It's something that's very different in us. Our research shows, just even from a genetic standpoint, that women are like that. But what that also means is that we tend to take on education that we may not need, or that we know we can't pay, and we're just hoping that we'll be able to pay it. So it's this idea of do you pick a school because you think it's what's going to help you get the job, when really what you need to know is that what you are internally is what's going to help you get the job. So we find that women find themselves in these moments of actually putting themselves from the start in debt, instead of having maybe focused on their confidence and taking on debt that was more something that they could handle, that they could actually translate into wealth more quickly. So it really is this thing about not only how we're conditioned by society, but how we condition ourselves. There's a little bit of nature that our research has shown that women try so hard with things like education that we sometimes are setting ourselves back with the decisions we make. And we could take on more risk. We can learn that from our male friends and allies, that sometimes that risk is good. And that because you can't check the last box in the resume doesn't mean you're not qualified.
Right.
But it does translate, as we saw, into them bearing a lot of debt, even if they have entered college. And then the thing is that when you see those differences in service jobs and things like that, that is something where we have to look at the intersectionality of things. For families that are growing up and have always worked in service jobs, they may be working in service jobs. The education may not be their issue. Their issue with wealth may be something different, not even having the opportunity for education.
Right. So generational.
It's so generational, and you really need to look at the intersections of the people in our community to understand. There's many reasons women don't accumulate wealth, and who they are and how they've been raised often has something to do with that. So it's not that the women that are in college are the ones necessarily ending up in the service jobs, but those are both things that are impacting women disproportionately.
I see. So we were talking, the report cites, I'm going to keep citing the report, historical and present policies that have kind of worked together to create this environment where women just aren't accessing that arena where you can accumulate wealth, historically speaking, like voting rights and the workplace in general, home ownership, property ownership, and then more presently, payday loans, predatory practices like that. Are there specific policies in Central Ohio that you can point to that are predatory, that are keeping women kind of underneath the...
Absolutely. I mean, as a nation, we saw what happened back in the Great Recession. The fact that so many people held subprime loans, and that's what really led to the bottom falling out. And it was unfortunately disproportionately women and single family, mothers leading families that were affected and eventually evicted over those subprime loans. We had allowed the system to take advantage. Again, women try to take care of their families. They have these children. Society wants us to buy homes, and very often that is a good investment. But again, sort of like the student loan, if you're reaching to do what's best for your family, you feel like it has to be perfect. You need to get to get the house. You're going to do what you can, and the system took advantage of those women and gave them these mortgages that looked really good on paper, and then the minute the bottom started to fall out, they accelerated and they couldn't pay,
Right.
and so then they ended up homeless. We know better than that as a country, that if we really want to end poverty, the way to end poverty is not to allow ourselves or our industries, in the name of the dollar, to take advantage of the people most in need of our support. These same women don't have child care policies at many of their workplaces that allow them to really take care of their children or their parents. Women often are the caretakers for various members of their families. And if we don't have child care policies that actually are enforced, it's one thing to have them on paper. It's another thing to actually, have paid family leave or a child care policy that works for women. One of the things that in Columbus that we're working on very much is evictions. The Columbus Women's Commission and various other partners of ours are working on those issues, because right now it's very possible that a woman who is in a difficult situation could be evicted by her landlord, and sometimes without the landlord even showing up in court to assert their side of the story.
Right.
And these are women who are trying to juggle family and jobs, probably multiple jobs, maybe trying to get an education. So they're getting put out on the street. And what we know is that the minute that they don't have that stability for themselves and their children, the whole family's prosperity declines. The
Right.
children, statistically at a third grade reading level, are already suffering when they don't have a home.
I think family planning is a big point here to be made when you talk about affordable childcare. That's just one point on a spectrum of choices that women have to make regarding their families, and we've seen how Ohio has a history of impeding women's rights in that realm. Do you think that things like reproductive justice comes into play as well?
This is a state that has decided that it supports motherhood, and if that's the case, then that is a very big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that you're exactly right. Every time a woman has a child, she has something that is going to affect her ability to be economically stable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to make sure that these mothers in Ohio have paid family leave and child care and insurance and access to information earlier in their lives, access to contraception. Those are two of the things that we talk about a lot. When given information and access to those about their own bodies and about contraception, they're able to make better decisions for their own economic stability and the stability of their families.
Mm-hmm.
So there's never a single issue.
Right.
And we have to own our responsibility to these women and their families. They can't accumulate wealth, to your point, if they don't have control over how they're planning for the future.
Right.
And certainly having good information and access to medically accurate health care and contraception are big pieces of that.
For sure. So I know that part of the recommendations from the report were really progressive policies, incentives for home ownership, affordable childcare, affordable health care. How do you accomplish these things in a really conservative state?
Well, I think that we've already seen our current governor come in and be very, very concerned about child care as an issue. And I think that we have to, the Women's Fund believes that supporting women, is something that is not, that there's been implicit bias in our laws and in our policies for years. This is not a state actually that stands up and decides it doesn't want women to achieve or that it doesn't want women to do well. But we have to address these implicit biases that we're missing in how we approach legislation and how we approach policy. And the truth is that a lot of the decisions about the things that are available are made by people who don't even realize those biases exist in themselves, both males and females. All of us have biases that we've grown up with, and a lot of the policies that are coming to bear are really from us not facing those biases and thinking hard about what really gives people a chance to work their way out of poverty. so we have to address the fact that, it is hard.
Right.
Because if people only address what they know, they may be very earnest about wanting to fix something and still not pick the avenues that will make that happen efficiently.
It's very much so intent versus impact, right?
Correct. Correct. I mean, you can care about people, and still, if we don't recognize what we don't know about so many of the people, Ohio is a very diverse state, with regard to the differences in economic, race, immigration status, all these things. Ohio has it all. And a lot of people have never been experienced various pieces of what our state actually looks like. And so what we really want to encourage people to do is to walk in people's shoes and think about these things. And let's not make decisions until we've actually thought about who they are. And I believe that no matter who you are in office, if you actually do that, we will come to solutions faster together if we actually stop for a minute to listen to what others are actually experiencing as opposed to assuming we know.
Right. Bringing more people to the table, regardless of maybe level of education even, like experiential information is just as important as, academics.
Well, it's basic
right?
design thinking.
Right, yeah.
If you're going to design solutions, most of the people I meet, regardless of what their political views are or what their current status is, most people don't want there to be people living in poverty. So what we have to do, though, is figure out if we all have, most of us have an intent for that not to exist, what is it that we're not doing to make that happen, to your point?
Right.
We have the intent, but why aren't we having the impact? And I really believe because we're not design thinking. We're not thinking about these women, and to our wealth gap report, we're not thinking about women and what they actually need to succeed.
Right.
And some of these very basic policies, although one could say they're progressive, we think they're actually just very pragmatic.
Sure, yeah.
Women want to take care of their children and go to work. And if they're put in the position of having to decide between the two, they're probably going to pick the children, which means that they'll lose their job. Or if they pick the job over their children, they'll lose their children. That's not something that I think most of us should be able to agree that that's not a position that's an untenable position to be in.
Not exactly choice.
And women are disproportionately affected by that because they are more likely to become a single parent home.
So the report also cites gender and race discrimination, just plain as day, in historical policies that we already went over. Have we fully let go of that racial and gender discrimination? Is there somewhat maybe an intent to keep women from fully competing in the workforce?
I think that's hard to say. I think that it's would be our view is that when we use our gender bias tool and we go out to companies or it's a conversation tool, and very often what we're seeing is that people come out changed. They honestly, all of us, I've come across moments where I didn't see a woman in a certain role or that I've over the years just accepted that women aren't in that role. And it's certainly not something I wanted to do. And so I honestly believe that when it comes to a lot of yes, is there racism? Absolutely. Do we need to make sure that we are all very aware that that is something that we should be taking a stand to eradicate? Absolutely. Do I think that everyone who makes a mistake in understanding is racist? No. I think that the implicit bias is something that we have to address to just say, I didn't even see that I was doing that. And that we need people every day who are able to change the way that they think and act once they realize that they're kind of harboring these biases that they've grown up with and they didn't even really realize that it had become part of them.
So for the women watching here, are there any programs that they should know about to take advantage of as far as homeownership incentives, financial literacy programs, things like that?
The first thing that women should do is realize that every moment in their life they have the control to create a safe and secure environment for themselves, no matter where they're starting from. And that can be as simple, we talk about things that may seem like, progressive policies and how will we get childcare changed. But the first and most important thing you can do is think about your educational choices and how much debt are you taking on and what can you actually pay off and the degree that you're getting, what can you do with it? Have you ever considered buying and owning something as opposed to renting? Renting can feel very safe, but really in the end, you can end up really far down the line and not having built something that's an actual asset for yourself. Women, you can invest. You can start a 401k plan at your job. If there's a life insurance option when you sign up for a job, do you ask for it, or do you take advantage of it? Women very often will say, well, that's an extra $2 a month, so I'm not going to do it. Or 401ks are a great example of something that women feel it's almost greedy to take advantage of something like that I'm setting aside money for myself when I should be taking care of my parents or taking care of my child. We will all be, and your family members will be the better for you setting aside something. And so we have that great quality of wanting to give as a gender, wanting to take care of others. But we really do need to, taking care of others will also involve taking care of ourselves.
Sure. Thank you, Kelley. This has been Kelley Griesmer with Women's Fund of Central Ohio. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.